The glass walls of conference room A might as well have been closing in. 6 months of work culminated in this moment. The Winters acquisition paperwork signed just hours ago. $500 million. The largest deal in company history. My deal. My victory. Until Drake slammed the door shut. $100,000, he said, voice dropping to that dangerous whisper I'd come to recognize. That's my cut for putting you on this account. The champagne in my glass stopped halfway to my lips. What? Don't play dumb, Riley. It doesn't suit you. Drake adjusted his cufflinks, platinum with tiny emeralds that matched his tie pin. I made this happen for you. I introduced you to Philip. I gave you access to the executive team. You attended one preliminary meeting, I countered, setting down my glass, and left early. His laugh was soft but sharp. Is that what you think matters? Meetings? Paperwork? This business runs on relationships. My relationships. Through the glass walls, I could see our colleagues still celebrating, oblivious to what was happening mere feet away. Jenny from marketing caught my eye and raised her glass in toast. I managed something resembling a smile. The commission structure was established from the beginning, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. You approved it yourself. The official structure, sure. Drake perched on the edge of the conference table, looming over me. But surely you understand there are unofficial arrangements for opportunities like this. My throat constricted. This commission is supposed to help me finally pay off my sister's medical treatments. Drake's expression didn't change. Should have thought about that before taking on a job that requires flexibility. He checked his watch. 20,000 by Friday. The rest can come from your quarterly bonuses. And if I refuse? The question surprised both of us. His smile vanished. Then I'll make sure everyone knows how you manipulated the numbers to close this deal. How you promised Philip things our company can't deliver. That's not true. Doesn't matter. He stood, straightening his jacket. The CEO plays golf with me every Sunday. HR director was my college roommate. Who do you think they'll believe? The executive who's brought in millions, or the desperate girl from nowhere who'd do anything to climb the ladder? I thought about my empty savings account, about my sister's next round of treatments, about Emma and Liv, who'd both mysteriously left the company after conflicts with Drake. I need time to think, I managed. Don't think too long. He moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and prepare the onboarding documents for the Winters team. I'll be presenting them personally tomorrow morning. After he left, I sat alone, watching the champagne bubbles slowly die in abandoned glasses. The bitter taste of injustice filled my mouth. 2 years of watching him take credit for my work. 2 years of smile nodding through meetings where my ideas became Drake's brilliant strategies. I don't know how long I sat there, but when I looked up, the office was nearly empty. Through the glass, I could see the cleaning crew beginning their nightly routine. Hey, I know we're right in the middle of something intense, but if you're getting invested in Riley's story, I'd really appreciate if you could hit that like button. It helps more people discover these stories. And if you want to see how she handles this impossible situation with her boss, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. Drop a comment too if you've ever dealt with someone taking credit for your hard work. Sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Now, let's get back to Riley's dilemma. My name is Riley Bennett. I'm 31 years old, and until yesterday, I believed that talent and dedication would eventually overcome office politics. Growing up with a single dad who worked construction until his back gave out, I learned early that nothing comes without sacrifice. I put myself through college with scholarships and weekend jobs, graduated top of my class, and landed what I thought was my dream job at Midwest Financial Partners. Everyone said I was fortunate to work under Drake Wilson. He's brilliant, they told me. Learn everything you can from him. What they didn't mention was how he built his reputation on others' work, how he selected team members not for their talents but for their usefulness and their reluctance to speak up. For 2 years, I played along. I arrived first and left last. I handled the grunt work while Drake took the meetings. I watched my strategies become Drake's visionary approach in company-wide emails. I nodded when clients praised him for presentations I'd crafted overnight. Everyone pays their dues, my friend Tara from legal told me. Just wait your turn. But the Winters deal was different. The Winters deal was mine from conception to execution. Philip Winters, the aging founder of Winters Manufacturing, had rejected acquisition offers for 15 years. 3 senior partners had tried and failed to even get a meeting. Then, during a charity auction, I happened to mention my grandfather's work in the same industry as Philip's father. It wasn't strategic, just a genuine connection that sparked a conversation. From that point, Philip insisted I handle all communications. For 6 months, I built the relationship, addressed his concerns, and crafted a deal that honored his legacy while securing our company's interests. And now Drake wanted $100,000 for his opportunity. I left the office at 10 p.m., the parking garage eerily silent except for my footsteps. My car, a practical sedan with 180,000 miles on it, protested before the engine caught. The service-needed light had been glowing for weeks, but with my sister's treatments, repairs weren't in the budget. My apartment was a one-bedroom in a building where the maintenance requests disappeared into the void. As I climbed the stairs, the elevator was temporarily out of order for the 3rd month running. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Decision made? My stomach twisted. Drake never gave subordinates his personal number. I left it unanswered and unlocked my door, immediately greeted by the comforting smell of the cinnamon candle I'd splurged on last payday. The walls were thin enough that I could hear my neighbor's television through them. I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto my couch. Options. I needed options. I could pay him, empty my emergency fund, take out a loan, delay helping with my sister's treatments. It would destroy me financially, but I'd keep my job. I could refuse and face his retaliation, lose my position, my income, my ability to help my family. And with Drake's connections, finding another role in this industry would be nearly impossible. I could report him to HR, but Drake's college roommate ran that department. I'd heard whispers about other complaints mysteriously disappearing. The CEO? Drake's golfing buddy and mentor. My thoughts circled until exhaustion pulled me into fitful sleep, still in my work clothes on the couch. The next morning, I arrived at the office before dawn, my decision made. There was a 4th option, risky, potentially career-ending, but the only one that let me keep my dignity. I booted up my computer and began assembling information, financial records, email chains, meeting notes. If I was going down, I wouldn't go quietly. At 8:15 a.m., Drake strode in, immaculate as always in a charcoal suit. He stopped by my desk, dropping a folder. "These need revisions before the winter's presentation," he said, loud enough for nearby colleagues to hear. Then, lowering his voice, "My account details are on the sticky note. Don't disappoint me, Riley." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. By lunchtime, the office buzzed with news of the winter's acquisition. Colleagues stopped by my desk to congratulate me, unaware of the hollow feeling their kind words created. I smiled and thanked them while finalizing my plan. At 2 p.m., I sent Drake an email. Subject: Winter's acquisition. Urgent discussion. Can we meet in conference room C at 3 p.m.? Have important information regarding the transfer. His reply came within minutes. On my way to external meeting. Make it 5 p.m. Perfect. Most staff would be gone by then. The hours crawled by. I checked my preparation repeatedly, my heart hammering so loudly I was sure others could hear it. At 4:30, I went to the restroom and splashed water on my face. The woman in the mirror looked different somehow, her eyes harder, her expression resolute. At 4:55, I entered conference room C and arranged my materials. At exactly 5 p.m., Drake walked in, closing the door behind him. "I hope this means you've come to your senses," he said, settling into a chair across from me. "The first installment is due tomorrow." I took a deep breath and pushed a folder toward him. "Actually, I wanted to discuss something else." He didn't open it. "There's nothing to discuss. You either pay or your career is over. Simple as that." "Before you make threats," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice, "you might want to look at what I've found." Curiosity flickered across his face. He opened the folder, his expression darkening as he scanned the contents. "What is this?" he demanded, color rising in his cheeks. "A record," I replied, "of every instance where client funds were mishandled under your supervision. Every falsified expense report. Every time you took credit for work you didn't do." His laugh held no humor. "You think anyone will believe you over me? This is your word against mine." Actually, I reached for my phone and pressed play. His voice filled the room. $100,000. That's my cut for putting you on this account. I stopped the recording. "I have more. Much more." Drake's momentary shock transformed into something dangerous. "You recorded me without consent? That's illegal in this state. You've just destroyed your own case." He stood up, towering over me. "You're fired. Effective immediately. Clear your desk and—" The conference room door opened. Drake's words died in his throat as a tall figure stepped inside. The expression on his face told me everything I needed to know about who had just entered the room behind me. Miss Bennett, Mr. Wilson. The company's general counsel, Eleanor, stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. Am I interrupting something? Drake recovered quickly, smoothing his tie. Not at all. I was just informing Riley that her performance has been unsatisfactory. We're parting ways. Eleanor's gaze moved from Drake to me, then to the folder on the table. Is that so? Because I received a rather unusual email from Miss Bennett an hour ago. Something about financial irregularities that required immediate attention. My heart pounded against my ribs. I'd sent that email as insurance, not expecting a response so quickly. Drake's smile tightened. Riley's obviously fabricating allegations to save her job, a common tactic when people know they're about to be terminated. Perhaps, Eleanor said, stepping fully into the room. But company policy requires us to investigate all claims of financial misconduct, regardless of their source. She closed the door behind her. Why don't we all sit down? Drake remained standing. This is ridiculous. I have the winter's presentation to prepare for. We can't afford to waste time on baseless accusations from a disgruntled employee. The presentation has been postponed, Eleanor replied evenly. At my request. The color drained from Drake's face. You don't have that authority. Actually, I do, especially when the concerns involve potential securities violations. Eleanor pulled out a chair and sat. Now, Riley, please explain what you've uncovered. For the next 30 minutes, I walked Eleanor through the documents I'd gathered. The pattern of inflated expense reports, client billing anomalies, where extra fees mysteriously vanished from official records, projects where junior staff did the work while Drake claimed the credit and bonuses. Drake interrupted repeatedly, his denials growing increasingly hostile until Eleanor silenced him with a raised hand. And how exactly did you access these records? She asked me. Most of this information would be restricted, the question I dreaded. Some of it came through regular channels, the rest. I've been keeping notes for months. Patterns I noticed. Drake seized the opening. She's admitting to unauthorized access. This is a clear violation of company policy and possibly criminal. I haven't finished, Eleanor cut in. Riley, this recording you mentioned. I slid my phone across the table. Drake demanded I pay him $100,000 in exchange for the Winters deal. He threatened to destroy my career if I refused. Eleanor's expression revealed nothing as she listened to the recording. When it finished, she turned to Drake. Your response? That recording was obtained illegally, he snapped. Single-party consent doesn't apply in this state. An interesting legal position, Eleanor replied. Though I'm more concerned that you're not denying the content. It's been taken out of context. Drake leaned forward, suddenly conciliatory. Riley and I have a private business arrangement outside of work. This was related to that. The lie was so audacious, I almost laughed. We have no business arrangement. I barely know him outside this office. Eleanor studied both of us. I'll need time to review these materials thoroughly. In the meantime, both of you should. The door opened again. This time, it was Jerry, the chief financial officer, a man whose reputation for ruthlessness matched his talent with numbers. Sorry I'm late, he said, taking in the scene. Traffic was brutal. Have I missed the exciting part? Eleanor gave him a brief summary while Drake shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I hadn't expected Jerry's involvement, hadn't known Eleanor would bring others into this so quickly. When she finished, Jerry nodded thoughtfully. If even half of this is accurate, we have a serious problem. He turned to Drake. Care to explain the discrepancies in the Jensen account? Drake's expression hardened. This is absurd. I've generated millions for this company. I don't deserve to be ambushed based on some random accusations. He stood abruptly. I'm calling Alan Hayes, the CEO, Drake's golfing buddy and mentor. Jerry shrugged. Go ahead. He's expecting my call anyway. That stopped Drake cold. What? Did you really think we wouldn't notice? Jerry asked. The accounting department flagged unusual patterns months ago. We've been quietly reviewing transactions for the past quarter. My stomach dropped. If they already knew, why had they allowed it to continue? Why hadn't they stopped him? Drake gathered his belongings. I need to speak with my attorney before this conversation goes any further. Eleanor nodded. That's your right. But I should inform you that as of this morning, your system access has been temporarily suspended. You can't, Drake began. Standard protocol for financial investigations, Jerry interrupted. Nothing personal. Drake's eyes found mine, burning with such hatred that I involuntarily leaned back. You'll regret this, he said quietly, then stormed out. The silence he left behind felt heavy. Finally, Eleanor turned to me. That was extremely risky, Riley. You should have come to us directly. Would you have believed me? I asked. Drake has powerful friends here. That remains to be seen, Jerry said. But your methods have created complications. Am I fired? I asked bluntly. Eleanor and Jerry exchanged looks. Not at this time, Eleanor said carefully. But we'll need your complete cooperation during the investigation and absolute discretion. What about the Winters account? I asked. For now, everything continues as scheduled, minus Drake's involvement, Jerry replied. Philip Winters specifically requested you remain as his primary contact anyway. That small victory felt hollow amid the uncertainty. As I gathered my things, Eleanor stopped me. Riley, be careful. Drake wasn't wrong about having connections here. Her expression softened slightly. Document everything going forward. I nodded and left, feeling their eyes on my back. The next day was surreal. Drake's office remained empty. Rumors swirled. He was on vacation. He was working remotely. He had food poisoning. I said nothing, focused on my work while jumping at every noise. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. You should have taken the deal. Careers end in many ways, some more painful than others. My hands shook as I showed the message to Eleanor. She frowned and added it to her growing file. We can't prove it's from him, she said, but I'll make note of it. Days passed. The Winters transition proceeded smoothly. Philip seemed relieved that Drake was no longer involved, though he never directly addressed the change. I buried myself in work, arriving early and staying late to avoid being alone in the parking garage. A week after our confrontation, I received an email from HR requesting my presence at a meeting the following morning. No agenda provided. I barely slept that night, rehearsing explanations and defenses. When I arrived at the designated conference room, I was surprised to find not just HR, but Eleanor, Jerry, and, most shockingly, Alan Hayes himself. Alan smiled pleasantly. Riley, thank you for joining us. Please, have a seat. I perched on the edge of a chair, pulse racing. Is this about Drake? Partially, Alan replied. We've completed our preliminary investigation into the financial irregularities you highlighted. And, I prompted when he paused, the findings are concerning, Jerry said. We've identified numerous discrepancies that can't be explained by clerical error. Drake maintains these were all authorized arrangements, Eleanor added. But we found no documentation supporting his claims. My mouth went dry. So what happens now? Alan leaned forward. That's why we wanted to speak with you. Drake has proposed a resolution. He's willing to resign quietly, if certain conditions are met. The implicit message was clear. They wanted this to go away without scandal, without investigations that might uncover who had enabled Drake's behavior all along. What conditions? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. He wants assurances that no legal action will be taken, Eleanor explained. And he's requested that you sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding all aspects of this situation. In exchange, Alan continued, the company would be prepared to offer you appropriate compensation for any discomfort this situation has caused. Hush money, I said flatly. Alan winced. We prefer to view it as acknowledgement of your discretion and loyalty to the company. And if I refuse? The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. That would be unfortunate, Alan replied carefully. While we appreciate your bringing these matters to our attention, the methods you used to gather information were problematic. Accessing restricted financial records, recording conversations without consent. I never accessed anything I wasn't authorized to see, I clarified. I simply connected dots from information already available to me. Perhaps, Jerry conceded. But these situations tend to become complicated once attorneys get involved. Messy for everyone. I stared at them. These powerful people who wanted to make a problem disappear. So Drake walks away with no consequences? After years of taking credit for others' work? After demanding bribes? After threatening my career? He's losing his position, HR pointed out. That's a significant consequence. Only to move to another company with glowing references, I assume, I replied. Alan sighed. Riley, I understand your frustration, but business realities sometimes require compromise. The Winters acquisition is extremely valuable to us. Negative publicity could jeopardize that relationship. Philip respects you, Jerry added. He's specifically commented on your integrity. Think about how this reflects on you professionally. The manipulation was so transparent, it was almost impressive. I looked from face to face, seeing not malice, but something perhaps worse, indifference. Drake was a problem they wanted solved with minimal fuss. My concerns were secondary. I need time to consider my options, I finally said. Of course, Alan replied. Take the weekend. We'll reconvene Monday morning. As I stood to leave, Eleanor caught my eye. Her expression held something I couldn't quite read. Warning? Sympathy? Calculation? I spent the weekend pacing my apartment, weighing impossible choices. Accept their offer and become complicit in covering up Drake's behavior. Refuse and potentially lose everything I'd worked for. Sunday evening, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Riley Bennett? A woman's voice. Unfamiliar. Yes? Who's this? My name is Zoe. I worked for Drake Wilson 3 years ago. My breath caught. How did you get my number? Through a mutual connection in HR. Her voice was tentative. I heard rumors about what's happening. About Drake possibly leaving. I can't discuss company matters, I said carefully. I understand. She paused. I wanted you to know you're not the first. There were others before me, too. He has a pattern. My grip tightened on the phone. Did you report it? Her bitter laugh told me everything. For all the good it did. 3 weeks later, I was let go for performance issues. No one wanted to touch me afterward. Drake made sure of that. We talked for nearly an hour. She gave me names, dates, details that matched patterns I'd observed. When Monday morning arrived, I walked into the office with a clear mind and a folder under my arm. The executive conference room was already occupied when I arrived. Alan, Jerry, Eleanor, and representatives from HR and legal. A document sat at my place at the table. Riley, Alan greeted me warmly. We appreciate your thoughtfulness in considering our proposal. I believe you'll find the terms generous. I remained standing. Before we discuss that, I'd like to share some additional information I've received. The atmosphere in the room shifted subtly. Eleanor straightened in her chair. We've already conducted a thorough investigation, Jerry said. Additional accusations would need substantial verification. Oh, I think you'll find this compelling, I replied, opening my folder. But first, I should mention that I'm not alone. On cue, the conference room door opened. The expressions on the executives' faces as they saw who entered would stay with me forever. Philip Winters stepped into the room, immaculately dressed in a tailored suit that did nothing to diminish the commanding presence of his 70 years. Behind him followed a severe-looking woman in a charcoal pantsuit carrying a leather portfolio. Alan stood so quickly his chair nearly toppled. Philip, we weren't expecting you until the transition meeting this afternoon. Clearly, Philip replied, his eyes taking in the scene with shrewd assessment. When Riley reached out yesterday with concerns about how your company handles business ethics, I thought it warranted immediate attention. The color drained from Alan's face. There's been a misunderstanding. Has there? Philip gestured to the woman beside him. This is Bernadette Ingram, my personal attorney for the past 20 years. She nodded curtly. She's quite interested in some of the billing irregularities Riley has identified. Jerry cleared his throat. Mr. Winters, with all due respect, internal company matters. Become my matters when they affect my acquisition, Philip interrupted. Especially when those irregularities appear on invoices sent to my company over the past 6 months. Eleanor's eyes darted to me, a mixture of shock and something that might have been respect. I opened my folder and began distributing copies of what I'd prepared. I've taken the liberty of organizing the evidence by category. The first section covers financial discrepancies directly affecting Winters Manufacturing. The second contains testimony from 7 former employees who experienced similar demands from Drake Wilson. Former employees have no standing, the HR representative began. The third section, I continued, details the systematic pattern of covering up complaints against Drake Wilson over the past 5 years, including altered performance reviews and suspicious terminations. Alan's jaw tightened. Where did you get this information? People talk, I replied simply, especially those who've been silenced for too long. Zoe hadn't come alone to my apartment the previous evening. She'd brought 2 others, former employees whose careers had been destroyed after refusing Drake's demands. They'd connected me with more. Throughout the night, we'd assembled their stories, matching dates, and details that created an undeniable pattern. This is outrageous, Alan sputtered. You've clearly violated confidentiality agreements, not to mention privacy protocols. Actually, Bernadette spoke for the first time, her voice precise. Whistleblower protections supersede standard confidentiality provisions when reporting suspected illegal activity. She tapped the document in front of her. And what's described here appears to constitute multiple violations of securities law, wire fraud, and quite possibly extortion. We can discuss this reasonably, Jerry attempted, his usual confidence faltering. There's no need to escalate. I believe it's already escalated, Philip said. The question is whether your company intends to address these issues properly, or whether we need to involve regulatory authorities. The threat hung in the air. The Winters acquisition represented not just money but prestige, a cornerstone deal that would attract other clients. To lose it amid scandal would be devastating. Alan's expression hardened as he turned to me. You've placed this company in an impossible position. Drake did that, I corrected quietly. I'm just refusing to be his latest victim. The door opened again, and Eleanor's assistant appeared. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the visitors you requested have arrived. Eleanor nodded. Send them in. Two unfamiliar men entered, both carrying identification badges that made Jerry visibly pale. Riley, this is Mr. Harris from the Securities and Exchange Commission and Mr. Larson from the State Financial Regulatory Board, Eleanor said. I took the liberty of contacting them after our meeting last week. The shock must have shown on my face. Eleanor had never indicated she was pursuing official channels. You went behind my back? Alan demanded. Eleanor met his gaze steadily. I went through proper channels, as required by my ethical obligations as general counsel. When Riley brought evidence of potential securities violations, I had a legal duty to report it. Understanding dawned. While I'd been building my case through former employees, Eleanor had been laying groundwork of her own. The next 3 hours were grueling. The regulators asked detailed questions, examining documents and taking notes. Bernadette interjected periodically with razor-sharp inquiries that left the executives scrambling. Philip observed silently, his disappointment palpable. By early afternoon, the preliminary interviews concluded. The regulators left with copies of everything, promising further investigation. Philip and Bernadette departed shortly after, but not before Philip pulled me aside. I've always valued integrity above cleverness, he said quietly. You've demonstrated both. Whatever happens here, remember my door is open. When only company personnel remained, Alan broke the tense silence. This is a disaster. The board will have questions, serious questions. About the regulatory investigation or about how long Drake's behavior was tolerated? I asked. His glare could have frozen water. You won't last here, Riley. You may think you've won, but this company has ways of dealing with problems. That sounds remarkably like a threat, Eleanor observed. One I wouldn't recommend making in front of witnesses after what we've learned today. This isn't over, Alan warned, gathering his things and stalking out. Jerry and the others followed, leaving just Eleanor and me. She studied me for a long moment. You took an enormous risk. So did you, I countered. Why? Her expression softened slightly. 20 years ago, I was you. Different company, similar situation. Nobody stood with me then. She straightened her jacket. Don't mistake this for friendship. The coming weeks will be unpleasant for everyone. She wasn't wrong. The next month became a blur of interviews, depositions, and tense meetings. Drake resigned officially, though rumors suggested the resignation wasn't entirely voluntary. 2 board members stepped down, citing personal reasons. Alan took an unexpected sabbatical. Through it all, I kept my head down and focused on managing the winter's transition, which proceeded despite the turmoil. My colleagues treated me with a mixture of awe and wariness, the woman who toppled an executive. Then came the Friday evening when I found a box on my desk. Inside was a security badge, keycard, and note. Temporary office on 18th floor. New position effective Monday. Discretion advised. The 18th floor housed executive offices. Confused, I took the elevator up after most staff had departed. Following the keycard's access, I found myself in a spacious corner office with windows overlooking the city. On the desk sat another note. Riley, the board has approved creation of a new position, Director of Client Relations, reporting directly to me. Your handling of the Winters account, despite extraordinary circumstances, demonstrated exactly the qualities we need. Some will claim this is to buy your silence. Let them. You and I will know the truth. Welcome to leadership. Eleanor. I sank into the leather chair, emotions warring within me. Victory? Vindication? Or just another form of containment? My phone buzzed with a message. Drake Wilson's profile has viewed your LinkedIn page. Curious, I navigated to Drake's profile. His new headline made my blood freeze. Senior Vice President, Executive Division, Crawford Financial. Crawford, our largest competitor. He'd landed on his feet after all, with a promotion no less. Bile rose in my throat as I imagined him continuing his patterns at a new company. Different victims, same predator. I was still staring at my phone when it rang. Unknown number. Miss Bennett? This is Detective Sanderson, Financial Crimes Division. We've been reviewing the evidence submitted in the Wilson case. There are some additional questions we'd like to ask you. That call set in motion the final chapter. Over the following weeks, I provided additional testimony, documentation, and context to investigators who took the case far more seriously than I'd initially hoped. They were particularly interested in patterns that stretched beyond our company, to previous employers, to client relationships, to Drake's personal finances. 3 months after his comfortable landing at Crawford Financial, Drake arrived at their offices to find investigators waiting with a warrant. The charges weren't just about his actions at our company, but a decade-long pattern of fraud, embezzlement, and extortion that spanned 3 employers. The news broke dramatically. Executive arrested on multiple fraud charges. Crawford Financial's stock plummeted as their vetting procedures came under scrutiny. Former victims came forward, emboldened by the prosecution. I watched it unfold from my new office, where Philip Winters had insisted I personally handle his company's ongoing business. The position Eleanor created had become real, with responsibilities and influence I'd never imagined possible so quickly. The day of Drake's arraignment, I received a small package. Inside was a newspaper clipping of his court appearance, and a handwritten note. Sometimes justice requires patience. And the right allies. Drake pled guilty to reduced charges 6 months later, agreeing to cooperate in the broader investigation that now encompassed Allen and others who had enabled his behavior. His career was finished, his reputation destroyed. The man who had threatened to end my career with a word had been toppled by something more powerful, the truth. My sister's medical treatments continued, now fully covered by the comprehensive insurance my new position provided. The emergency fund I'd nearly emptied to survive those turbulent months slowly rebuilt. And the women who had stood with me, Zoe and the others, found new opportunities through Philip's extensive network. The $100,000 Drake demanded, it became the initial donation to a legal defense fund for whistleblowers facing retaliation, managed through a foundation Philip established with my guidance. Sometimes I think about that moment in the conference room when Drake cornered me, how close I came to giving in, how easy it would have been to surrender to fear. One decision changed everything, not just for me, but for everyone who would have followed in my footsteps as his victim. There's a strange peace in knowing that true power isn't in corner offices or executive titles. It's in the courage to stand firm when everything within you wants to run. It's in finding your voice when others expect silence. And sometimes, it's in simply saying no when the world is demanding your surrender. If you're facing your own Drake Wilson right now, know that you're not alone. Sometimes victory doesn't look like we expect. Sometimes it takes longer than we hope. But truth has a weight that lies can never match, and eventually, the scales balance. If you found something valuable in my story, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss other stories of justice and resilience. Drop a comment sharing your own experience, standing up to workplace bullying. Your words might give someone else the courage they need today. And if this story resonated with you, that like button helps more people find it who might need to hear exactly this message right now. Thanks for listening to my journey from desperation to vindication. Sometimes the best revenge isn't what we do to others. It's what we refuse to let them do to us.